Hi, I'm Alex, and this is Pucks and Paperbacks. Today, I am finally bringing you my best books of 2022. This list contains books I read, loved, and quickly became favorites in 2022. If you're interested in any of the books I mentioned in this video, you can check my description for a playlist to my 2022 wrap-ups. It's every reading wrap-up for the year, starting with January, ending with December, and you can also find the titles and affiliate links to each book. This helps out my channel if you click the link and purchase, but it is at no extra cost to you. I just earn a small commission if you use my links, and it really helps support my channel. Also, I recently did the 2022 reading survey, which is where I go over some of the books that aren't mentioned in this video, as well as some superlatives, so you can check that out in my description as well. I would love to know what your favorite book of 2022 was, so feel free to drop it in the comments. Before I get started, I want to let you know the HarperCollins Union is still on strike, and in solidarity, they are asking reviewers to hold any reviews of HarperCollins titles until they receive a fair bargain. At the time of recording, the HarperCollins Union has been on strike for at least 2 months now, so if you would like to financially support them, there's a couple ways. You can donate to their fund, which will be provided in the link down below, and you can also use their bookshop, so you can buy any of the books I mentioned in this video through their bookshop, and they will receive a small commission, and it will really help them out because since they've been on strike for 2 months, they have not gotten paid in 2 months. So if you want to know more about the union and how you can support, the link down below will tell you everything. Now, if any book mentioned in this video is a HarperCollins title, I'm not going to be reviewing it and telling you why I loved it, which is really unfortunate, but until they receive a fair bargain, I am complying with what the union told us to do. It's really a shame, but sometimes support means sacrifice. And now, here are my best books of 2022. Now, my list isn't in particular order, but I do love all of these books equally, so I'm gonna start from the bottom with House Fires by Connor Franta. This was my first read of 2022. This is Connor's third nonfiction book about being an LGBTQ+ adult. Connor is a gay man, and I really related to that aspect of this book because it talks all about adulthood, but he also adds his own photography and poems. But it also tackles conversations of grief, mental health, especially depression, which he did touch on in his sophomore novel, Note to Self, which is one of my favorites as well. But this is about adulthood, and I could relate to it so much being a trans adult. I needed this book so much at the moment, so I'm really glad it was my first read of 2022. Know My Name by Chanel Miller is another memoir I read, I think, in January as well, and I am so glad I finally got around to reading this one. Chanel Miller is the victim of Brock Turner, and this is her book just revealing her identity, and I love the way it was written because you feel like you're with Chanel at every aspect of her life, before, after, and present day. I really love the way this was written. Chanel is a phenomenal writer, and I really hope she writes more because this was such a great read. I just love the way it was written. I did read the audiobook, which is narrated by the author, and it takes you through the before and after of the sexual assault, but then you're also taken to present day as she is living now as a victim and a survivor, and what life looks like for her. I think this is a must read for everybody. I'm so glad I finally got around to it, and like I said, I hope she writes more because she's a phenomenal writer. Stone Fruit by Lee Lai is a graphic novel I was recommended in my queer graphic novels reading vlog, and it quickly became my favorite book. You're gonna sense a theme in this list because this has queer adults. This is a slice of life about a queer adult following 2 women who are in a relationship. One is a trans woman who does experience religious bigotry and transphobia. There's a lot of talk about that in the book, but ultimately this is a slice of life about caring for a child. It is just so wholesome, and I really enjoyed it. I don't really have much more to give you than I read it and just loved it. I actually don't have a definitive answer to why I love this book. I just had a really good time reading it. I could relate to aspects of it. Being a trans adult, I saw a lot of things that I related to in the book, and I am so glad I was recommended this. Cafe con Leche by Emery Lee. To Touch the Light by E.M. Lindsay is a novella I read back in December, and it is the first time I have read a romance with explicit sex scenes and the main character is a trans man. This is following Mario, who is a chef in a resort, and I have been craving a book that is set in a kitchen since I watched The Bear on Hulu, and this was everything that I needed. It is a romance between a cis man and a trans man, and I really like that the sex scenes were written with care. This was the first time I ever read a romance with a trans man as the main character before, and so it's on this list because one, I just loved it, but two, I felt so represented and I had to add it to the list. But this was awesome and I cannot wait to read more of this author's work. The Heartbreak Bakery by A.R. Capetta is a book I have not stopped thinking about. This is following Sid, an agender magical baker. Sid makes breakup brownies, and everyone in Sid's town starts breaking up. I loved this so much. It was so fun. I read this for a video where I read books about queer bakers and baked some of the recipes from the books, including the breakup brownies, which I have made several times since and am obsessed with. The Feeling of Falling in Love by Mason Deaver is a book that is near and dear to my heart. From the One Direction references to Neil, our brooding, messy trans boy, this is one of my favorite YA enemies to lovers. Man o' War by Corey McCarthy is a great YA about living in a small town, exploring your gender identity, being a trans person in sports, and love. This is an excellent book with trans rage and finding trans joy within. Next is one of my new favorite thrillers, The Dead in the Dark by Courtney Gould. This is a YA thriller set in a small town, and it's all about having to open up your worldview, and I really enjoy small town settings for this reason. Logan is a lesbian, and specifically in this book, the teenagers around her are disgusted and homophobic. But as she spends more time with them, their worldview opens, and I really loved the way that was written. It also has ghost hunting, and it is just the most action-packed thriller I've ever read, and that is what I've been craving this year, and I'm so glad I got a chance to read it. Another middle grade on my list is The Deepest Breath by Meg Grehan. I read this at the end of the year and I loved it so much. It's a book I wish I had as a kid, so I had to add it to the list. This is a middle grade written in verse following a girl who has feelings for another girl in her class, and she is scared and she just wants to know what's going on. And I love how positive the adults are in this book. This has so much queer joy and I felt so affirmed reading this book. Like I said, I wish I had this as a kid, so I had to add it on this list. Some of the books on this list are actually books I picked for my Patreon book club. I run a bi-monthly book club over on Patreon where we read queer books, and I am so happy that a lot of the books we read were winners, including Perfect on Paper by Sophie Gonzalez. This is a YA contemporary about a girl named Darcy who has given anonymous love advice to her classmates, and one day this guy that she is not a fan of asks her for advice and says that he will pay her, and I just loved this so much. I still think about it. Sophie Gonzalez is such a great writer. I love the way she tells her stories. Her characters are awesome, and I had so much fun reading this. Like I said, I can still picture all of the scenes in my head, and I love this so much, especially that it talks about bi-erasure. I loved the conversations in here about bi-erasure and just not feeling like you deserve to be in a queer space. I loved that so much, but the characters and all of the shenanigans that went on in this book were so fun to read. Next up on my list is Fierce Femmes and Notorious Liars by Kai Chen Thom, a book about trans liberation and trying to find your bearings while fighting off your oppressors. A Lot's Away by Darcy Little Badger is a book I was pleasantly surprised by. I would not have picked this up if I had known that it had supernatural elements, but the storytelling was so amazing. I loved the characters. I read the audiobook in June for the Queer Lit Readathon. I have a reading vlog, so I'll link it down below. But I love this so much that I ran out and got a physical copy, and I cannot wait to reread it because it was fucking awesome. When You Trap a Tiger by Tate Keller is a middle grade that I read in one night and cried my eyes out. The storytelling is magical and it's one you won't forget. Evilise Explains It All by Andrea Beatriz Arango is a middle grade every kid needs. It's a spectacular debut written in verse about mental health and grief. I really surprised myself when I was putting this list together because I was under the impression I didn't read a lot of middle grade, but my next couple books are middle grade, so continuing with Too Bright to See by Kyle Lukoff, another middle grade that made me sob uncontrollably. This is another book I wish I had as a kid. It's following Bug, who is about to enter middle school but realizes he's not like the other girls. This was incredible. I loved it so much. Obie is Man Enough by Skylar Baylar is a book filled with trans joy and a trans kid just existing. Meanwhile, he is dealing with transphobia and bullying from school and from the adults in his life. After he comes out as trans, his transphobic swim coach kicks him off the team and he has to find out where he is going to swim next. I like how this book deals with transphobia, but also shows Obie as a person. He is experiencing crushes, he's on the swim team, he's making friends. It is the middle school experience, but it is way harder for a trans kid. And I just love how light this was. It was awesome. I read this back in March for the Queer Weekend, and I have a reading vlog where I had Instagram control my weekend, and I actually tried something from the book. So I'll have that link down below for you if you want to check it out. And the last book you're probably not surprised by if you have been following my channel for the whole span of 2022. You're probably sick of hearing this book, and you're probably surprised that it's not here yet. And my best book of 2022 is Icebreaker by A.L. Graziadei. This is a love letter to hockey fans everywhere and openly discusses mental health in college. I related to Mickey on so many levels, as he was hiding in his dorm room and didn't want to go to a concert, as he had his bad days, but the characters were so fun, and this made my hockey fan heart very full. This is an incredible debut. It is one of the best Rivals to Lovers I've ever read, and I hope you will pick it up. Those were my best books of 2022. If you enjoyed this video, feel free to give it a thumbs up. It really helps out my channel when you do so. And if you want to hear more of my thoughts on queer and trans books and you want some more recommendations, feel free to hit subscribe. And let me know what your favorite book of 2022 was, or books. Let me know in the comments. Let's chat. If you're interested in my Patreon book club or you want a personalized book recommendation, check out my Patreon. It is the best way to help support my channel. Thank you for watching, and I will see you in my next video very soon. Bye.